At my cousin's wedding, my uncle demanded, "You're just here to take photos and not to eat." Then I observed my $4,700 gift had already been opened. I quietly picked it up and disappeared. I, 32M, never thought I'd be writing this, but here we are. What happened at my cousin's wedding 3 weeks ago has completely changed how I see my family, and honestly, I'm still processing it all. My cousin was getting married to someone she'd been with for about 2 years. The wedding was planned as this big, elaborate affair, the kind where everyone in the extended family was expected to show up and contribute. When I got the invitation, I was genuinely happy for her. We'd grown up together, and despite some family drama over the years, I wanted to celebrate her big day properly. The gift situation is where this gets complicated. I'm a software engineer, and I've been doing pretty well for myself lately. I wanted to give something meaningful, something that would actually help them start their new life together. After thinking about it for weeks, I decided on a high-end espresso machine, one of those professional-grade ones that coffee enthusiasts dream about. It cost me $4,700, but I figured it was an investment in their happiness. They were both coffee lovers, and I thought they'd use it every day for years to come. I had it shipped directly to their apartment about a week before the wedding, along with a card explaining that I wanted them to have something special for their new home. I figured they'd appreciate having it early so they could enjoy it right away, rather than dealing with a massive gift pile after the wedding. The wedding day arrived, and I drove 3 hours to get to the venue. I'd taken the day off work, bought a new suit, and was genuinely looking forward to celebrating with everyone. The ceremony was beautiful, outdoor setting, perfect weather, everyone dressed up and happy. I took some photos during the ceremony because I'm decent with a camera, and I thought the couple might appreciate having some candid shots from a family member's perspective. After the ceremony, we all moved to the reception area. The venue was nice, not over-the-top expensive, but definitely elegant. There were probably about 150 people there, a mix of family and friends from both sides. I was seated at a table with some other cousins and family friends, and initially, everything seemed normal. That's when my uncle approached me. He's always been the type who thinks he runs every family gathering, the self-appointed coordinator who has opinions about everything. He walked over to my table with this serious expression and told me that I was only there to take photos and that I shouldn't expect to eat with everyone else. He said it matter-of-factly, like he was just informing me of some obvious arrangement that had already been decided. I was confused. I asked him what he meant, and he explained that since I'd been taking pictures during the ceremony, he'd assumed I was there in some kind of official photographer capacity. He said the family had already paid for meals for the actual guests, and that if I wanted to eat, I'd need to pay for my own plate. The cost would be $85 per person. I tried to explain that I was a guest, that I'd been invited just like everyone else, and that I'd only been taking photos as a family member who happened to have a decent camera. But he wasn't having it. He insisted that I'd been designated as the photographer and that this had all been arranged beforehand. He said if I wanted to eat, I could pay the $85 or I could leave. The whole conversation was happening in front of other family members, and I could see people starting to stare. I felt humiliated, but I also didn't want to cause a scene at my cousin's wedding. I told him I'd think about it and walked away to clear my head. That's when I decided to find the gift table to see if my present was there. I figured maybe seeing it would remind me why I was there, to celebrate my cousin, not to deal with family politics. I made my way over to the area where gifts were displayed, and that's when I saw it. My $4,700 espresso machine was sitting on a side table, but the box was already open. Not just open, completely unpacked. The machine itself was sitting there, along with all the accessories, the manual, everything. It was clearly being displayed as if it were part of the wedding decorations or something. I stood there staring at it for a moment, trying to process what I was seeing. This was a gift I'd sent to their apartment a week ago, something meant for their private enjoyment in their new home. But here it was, unpacked and on display at the wedding reception, like some kind of trophy. I walked closer and saw that my card was nowhere to be found. Instead, there was a small placard next to the machine that read from the family. No specific names, just a generic attribution that made it seem like it was a group gift from multiple relatives. That's when everything clicked. I realized what was happening. My uncle, who was clearly involved in coordinating wedding logistics, had somehow gotten hold of my gift and decided to repurpose it. Maybe he thought it was too expensive to be from just one person, or maybe he wanted to make it seem like the family had collectively contributed something impressive. Either way, my personal, thoughtful gift had been turned into something else entirely. I felt a surge of anger, but also a strange sense of clarity. Here I was, being told I couldn't eat at my own cousin's wedding without paying $85, while my $4,700 gift was being displayed as if it came from everyone. The hypocrisy was stunning. I looked around to see if anyone was watching me. The gift area was relatively quiet. Most people were focused on the cocktail hour and mingling. I made a decision that I'm still not sure was right or wrong, but it felt necessary in the moment. I started packing the espresso machine back into its box. All the pieces were there: the machine, the grinder, the accessories, even the original packaging materials. It took me about 10 minutes to get everything back in the box properly, and during that time, I kept expecting someone to come over and ask what I was doing. But no one did. Once everything was packed, I picked up the box and walked toward the exit. It was heavy, probably about 40 pounds, but I managed to carry it to my car without anyone stopping me. I put it in my trunk, got in my car, and drove away. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. I didn't make an announcement or cause a scene. I just left, taking my gift with me. The drive home was surreal. I kept thinking about what had just happened, wondering if I'd overreacted or if I'd done the right thing. Part of me felt guilty for leaving my cousin's wedding early, but a bigger part of me felt like I'd been completely disrespected by my own family. When I got home, I set the espresso machine up in my own kitchen. It's been sitting there for 3 weeks now, and I use it every morning. It makes incredible coffee, and every time I use it, I think about what happened at that wedding. Update 1. The fallout started the next day. My phone began ringing around noon. First my mom, then my aunt, then several cousins. Word had gotten out that I'd taken the espresso machine and left the wedding early. My mom was the first to call, and she was upset. She asked me what had happened and why I'd embarrassed the family by leaving early. I explained the whole situation, how my uncle had told me I couldn't eat without paying, how my gift had been opened and displayed as if it were from everyone, how I'd felt completely disrespected. Her response surprised me. Instead of being sympathetic, she told me that I should have just paid the $85 and stayed for my cousin's sake. She said that taking the gift back was petty and that I'd ruined what should have been a happy day for everyone. I tried to explain that it wasn't about the money. It was about the principle. I'd been invited as a guest. I'd given an expensive gift, and then I'd been treated like hired help. But she wasn't hearing it. She said I was being dramatic and that I needed to apologize to my uncle and my cousin. My aunt called next, and she was even more direct. She told me that my behavior was unacceptable and that I owed everyone an apology. She said that the espresso machine had been a highlight of the gift display and that taking it had been noticed by everyone. Apparently, people had been asking about it during the reception, and when they realized it was gone, it had caused quite a stir. I asked her if she knew about my uncle's decision to exclude me from dinner, and she said that there had been some confusion about my role at the wedding. She claimed that someone had mentioned I was taking photos, and they'd assumed I was there in a professional capacity. She said it was all just a misunderstanding. But here's the thing. Even if it was a misunderstanding, no one had bothered to clarify it with me. They'd just made assumptions and then treated me accordingly. And the gift situation still didn't make sense. How does a misunderstanding about my role at the wedding explain why my personal gift was opened and displayed as if it were from multiple people? Over the next few days, I got calls from several other family members. Most of them were critical of my actions, saying that I'd overreacted and that I should have handled things differently. A few were more understanding, but even they suggested that I should have stayed and worked things out rather than leaving. My cousin herself finally called me about a week after the wedding. She was crying when she called, and she told me that she was hurt and confused by what had happened. She said that she'd been looking forward to thanking me for the espresso machine during her reception speech, but when she went to find it, it was gone. I felt terrible hearing her cry, but I also felt like I needed to explain my side of the story. I told her about the conversation with her father, about how I'd been told I couldn't eat without paying, about how my gift had been opened and displayed without my knowledge or consent. She was quiet for a long time after I finished explaining. Then she told me that she hadn't known about any of this. She said that her father had been handling a lot of the wedding logistics, and she'd trusted him to manage things appropriately. She said she was sorry that I'd been treated that way, but she also said that she wished I'd come to her directly instead of just leaving. I understood her point, but I also explained that I'd been put in an impossible position. How do you approach a bride on her wedding day to complain about how her family is treating you? It would have been selfish to burden her with that kind of drama on what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. She asked if I would consider bringing the espresso machine back, and I told her I'd think about it. But honestly, I wasn't sure I wanted to. The whole situation had left me feeling like my family didn't really value or respect me, and giving the gift back felt like it would just validate their behavior. Update 2. 2 weeks after the wedding, I got a call from my uncle. This was the first time he'd contacted me since the incident, and I wasn't sure what to expect. He started by telling me that my behavior at the wedding had been completely inappropriate and that I owed everyone an apology. He said that I'd embarrassed the family and that my actions had overshadowed what should have been a celebration of my cousin's marriage. I let him talk for a while, and then I asked him to explain his decision to exclude me from dinner. I wanted to hear his reasoning directly from him, without any intermediaries or second-hand explanations. His response was interesting. He said that when he'd seen me taking photos during the ceremony, he'd assumed that I was there in some kind of official capacity. He claimed that he'd been trying to manage costs for the reception and that he'd thought I was being paid to photograph the event. He said that if he'd known I was just a regular guest, he would have handled things differently. I asked him about the gift situation, and his explanation was even more revealing. He said that when the espresso machine had arrived at my cousin's apartment, she'd been overwhelmed by the expense of it. Apparently, she'd felt guilty about accepting such an expensive gift from one person, especially when other family members were giving much smaller presents. According to my uncle, my cousin had asked him to display the machine at the wedding as if it were a group gift from multiple family members. The idea was that this would make her feel less guilty about accepting it, and it would also make other family members feel like they'd contributed to something significant. I was stunned. This meant that the decision to repurpose my gift hadn't been some random mistake or misunderstanding. It had been a deliberate choice made by my cousin and her father. They decided that my gift was too personal or too expensive to be acknowledged as coming from me alone. I asked my uncle if he understood how this had made me feel, and he said that he hadn't really thought about it from my perspective. He said that they'd been focused on making the wedding day perfect for my cousin, and they'd thought that the gift arrangement would work better for everyone involved. I told him that I felt like my thoughtfulness and generosity had been completely disregarded. I'd spent a significant amount of money on something I thought would be meaningful to my cousin, and instead of being appreciated for that gesture, I'd been treated like my contribution didn't matter enough to be acknowledged. He was quiet for a moment, and then he said something that really stuck with me. He told me that maybe I'd been too generous, that the gift had been so expensive that it had made other people uncomfortable. He suggested that in the future, I should consider giving gifts that were more in line with what other family members could afford. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He was essentially telling me that I'd been wrong to be generous, that I should have given a smaller gift to avoid making other people feel bad about their own contributions. The logic was completely backwards. I told him that I disagreed with his perspective and that I didn't think I owed anyone an apology. I said that I'd been treated poorly at the wedding, that my gift had been misrepresented without my consent, and that I'd responded by removing myself from a situation where I wasn't being respected. He didn't like that response. He told me that I was being stubborn and that I was prioritizing my own feelings over the family's unity. He said that if I didn't apologize and return the gift, there would be long-term consequences for my relationships with everyone. I told him I'd think about it, but honestly, I'd already made up my mind. I wasn't going to apologize for standing up for myself, and I wasn't going to return a gift that had been misrepresented and used without my permission. Update 3. It's been 3 weeks since the wedding, and the family situation has continued to evolve. Some relationships have been damaged, but others have actually gotten stronger. My cousin called me again a few days ago, and this time the conversation was different. She'd apparently had some time to think about everything that had happened, and she wanted to apologize for her role in the gift situation. She explained that when the espresso machine had arrived at her apartment, she'd been genuinely overwhelmed by how expensive it was. She said that she'd felt guilty about accepting it, especially when she knew that other family members were giving much smaller gifts. She'd been worried that people would think she was being greedy or that she was expecting expensive presents from everyone. Her solution had been to ask her father to display the machine at the wedding as if it were a group gift. She thought this would solve the problem of the expense while still allowing her to keep and use the machine. She said she hadn't really thought about how this would affect me or how I'd feel about having my gift misrepresented. I appreciated her honesty, and I told her that I understood her perspective. I could see how receiving such an expensive gift might have made her uncomfortable, especially if she was worried about other people's reactions. But I also explained that the way the situation had been handled had made me feel like my thoughtfulness and generosity weren't valued. She asked if there was a way to fix things, and I told her that I wasn't sure. The damage had been done, and I wasn't sure how to move forward. The gift itself had become symbolic of larger issues in our family. Issues around communication, respect, and how we treat each other. Interestingly, the situation has also revealed some things about other family members that I hadn't known before. My younger brother called me last week to tell me that he thought I'd handled everything correctly. He said that he'd always felt like our uncle was controlling and manipulative, and that what had happened at the wedding was just a more obvious example of behavior that had been going on for years. He also told me that several other family members had privately expressed support for my actions, even though they hadn't said anything publicly. Apparently, there's been some long-standing resentment about how my uncle handles family events and how he treats people who don't go along with his plans. My mom's perspective has also shifted somewhat. She called me a few days ago to say that she'd been thinking about our previous conversations and she wanted to understand my side of things better. I walked her through everything again. The dinner situation, the gift display, how I'd felt throughout the whole experience. She admitted that she hadn't fully understood how disrespectful the treatment had been. She said that when she'd first heard about what happened, she'd focused on the fact that I'd left the wedding early and taken the gift, without really considering what had led to those actions. She asked if I would consider attending the next family gathering, and I told her I wasn't sure. The whole experience has made me question how much I want to be involved with extended family events, especially ones where my uncle is involved in the planning. As for the espresso machine, it's still sitting in my kitchen, and I use it every day. It makes incredible coffee, and in a weird way, it's become a symbol of standing up for myself. Every morning when I use it, I'm reminded that sometimes you have to prioritize your own self-respect over family harmony. I've thought a lot about whether I handled everything correctly, and honestly, I'm still not sure. Maybe I should have tried to work things out at the wedding instead of just leaving. Maybe I should have approached my cousin directly to discuss the gift situation. Maybe I should have been more understanding about the pressure she was feeling. But I also think that my family's response to the situation has been revealing. The fact that so many people focused on my reaction rather than the treatment that led to it suggests that there are some deeper issues with how we communicate and how we treat each other. I'm not sure what's going to happen with family relationships going forward. Some bridges may have been burned, but maybe that's not entirely a bad thing. Sometimes you have to step back from situations that aren't healthy, even when those situations involve people you care about. The whole experience has taught me something important about setting boundaries and standing up for yourself, even when it's uncomfortable or when other people don't understand your perspective. I'm still processing everything that happened, but I don't regret the choices I made that day. Sometimes the most important gift you can give yourself is the knowledge that you won't accept being treated poorly, regardless of the circumstances or the people involved. That lesson was worth more than $4,700.